Welcome to the debate. Usually when we talk about a career path, there's this expectation of a ladder. You start at the bottom and just keep your head down as you climb straight up.
Right, just rung by rung.
Exactly. But with midlife career transitions, it's like suddenly that ladder is missing rungs. You're looking at a leap into the void. So today we're examining what actually makes that late career leap successful.
Yeah, and specifically, the core question, is it fundamentally a psychological transformation that requires intentional retraining, or is it a deeply pragmatic exercise in matching the skills you already possess to a new environment?
Right. And we are grounding this discussion in some really rich source material today.
We are. Specifically, we'll be looking at the AIER Older Worker Survey, the VTech Works Military Transition Study, and, well, a lot of contemporary career transition literature.
So I'll be taking the stance that psychological factors, specifically confidence, control, and readiness, are the absolute bedrock of a successful transition.
And I will be arguing that the data tells a deeply pragmatic story, and that leveraging your existing skill sets is the true empirical determinant of success.
Okay, so let's jump in. I look at the VTech Works study of military members transitioning into civilian teaching, and the driving force there isn't just a simple resume match. It's totally internal.
Well, sure, confidence matters.
But it's the defining factor. Factors like confidence, a sense of control, psychological readiness, those are what actually dictate their successful adaptation. You see the exact same thing in the civic ventures data on encore careers.
Right, those are the late career pivots specifically focused on social impact.
Yeah, personal meaning, exactly. People succeeding in those roles lean really heavily on new education and training. You have to actively build a new professional identity to step into a new paradigm.
Okay, I see why you emphasize that internal shift. I really do. But the AIER study tells a completely different, highly pragmatic story.
Okay, how so?
Well, when you look at their data, a massive 82% of older career changers succeed, and they do it by sticking to what they already know.
Wow, 82%?
82%. The successful ones carried over an average of 7 distinct, overlapping skills from their previous jobs. So it wasn't about fundamentally transforming who they were. It was the brutal pragmatism of knowing exactly which of their existing tools fit a new problem.
Yeah, but what happens when that transition isn't a choice? If someone experiences a sudden corporate layoff, they can't just coldly audit their skills.
You're talking about the emotional shock.
Right. There is a massive psychological shock. Relying purely on old skills after an involuntary layoff is, well, it's like trying to navigate a new city with an old map.
That's an interesting analogy.
Without the psychological readiness to reorient, which sometimes requires utilizing therapy like CBT to combat isolation, those existing skills are effectively useless. You have to rebuild your psychological foundation before you can build a new house.
Look, I absolutely acknowledge the emotional toll of an involuntary layoff. But the idea that you need to fundamentally reorient, specifically through formal retraining, is actually a massive trap.
A trap? Wait, really?
Yes, this is the most striking finding in the AIER survey. The people who failed at their career change actually completed more short-term training.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 41% of unsuccessful changers tried to retrain, and they applied to an average of 20 jobs, compared to just 8 for the successful ones.
Okay, why do you think that extra training backfired so severely? That seems counterintuitive.
It's because of how the market values a mid-career professional. Employers generally do not want to hire a 50-year-old novice with a fresh 6-week certificate. They want seasoned judgment.
I guess that's fair.
Taking a bunch of entry-level courses makes you look unfocused. To use a mechanical analogy, if you take the heavy-duty engine out of a truck, you don't break it down to build a steam engine. You just drop it into a boat.
Right.
The environment changes, sure, but the core engine, your core competence, has to remain exactly the same.
That's a great analogy. Though I would argue that dropping the engine into a boat still requires a massive psychological shift in how you view your own utility. Look at the Learning People Guide on career change cover letters.
Okay.
They point out that a standard application simply will not work. You have to translate your past achievements into the specific terminology of a totally new industry.
True. Translation is key.
And that translation process isn't just hitting find and replace on a document. It's a psychological exercise. It forces you to completely reframe your identity to bridge the gap.
The translation piece is critical. I completely agree. You have to speak the new industry's language. But the substance underneath that translation is still your prior expertise.
Right, but the framing changes.
Sure, you're like an actor switching from live stage theater to film. The medium changes, the delivery gets smaller, but the underlying acting chops are exactly the same muscles you've always used.
You know, I think we're actually circling a really clear convergence here. Navigating the turbulence of a midlife pivot absolutely requires the psychological resilience and intentionality to make the leap.
But that leap is only safe if it's anchored by the pragmatic wisdom to carry over your strongest existing skills rather than trying to start completely from scratch.
Precisely. The source material offers so many more layers to this transition, leaving plenty for the listener to determine which approach holds more weight for their own path. Sometimes you have to jump, but you never have to jump empty-handed.
The city holds its breath now. Just the hum of the universe. Let the quiet settle in your mind. Until next time on Midnight English.